Hello there and welcome to Euronet Plus. Today in Strasbourg we are back after the summer break, and the debate today will be on bankers' bonuses with the main question: do the bankers still earning too much money? My two guests are two members of the European Parliament, Pervenche Berès, you from France, and from the Socialists and Democrats Group. Hello. Hello. And Mr. Steven Woolfe, you from Europe of Democracy and Direct Democracy. Hello.
Yes. Hello, good morning.
And you also the UK Independence Party Financial Affairs spokesman.
That's correct, yes.
Hello and welcome both of you. So, do the bankers still earning too much money? That may be a cliché that the European Union wants to break and decided to limit the bankers' bonuses to 1 year's salary or twice this amount with the approval of shareholders. But there are some banks who try to circumvent the EU cap on bonuses by giving to top executives some allowances. So, Mrs. Berès, do you think the bankers are still earning too much money?
Well, I believe if the EU legislation is not applied in one member state, it creates a problem. And I know the kind of debate we had here in the European Parliament. It's been a huge battle between us and also some member states in the Council. But in the end, under the leadership of a colleague from UK, Arlene McCarthy, we've been able to pass through this legislation you have just recalled. And I think now it's time to apply it and to be consistent with the application of this law, because it's been driven by the lesson to take from the crisis. And I think nobody wants to go back to a new crisis. So also this legislation on bankers' bonuses is a cornerpiece of what we need to implement now.
And you, Mr. Woolfe, should we reduce the bankers' salary?
No, I don't think we should. And I don't think that it is the part of government, and particularly an institution like the European Union, to actually be actively involved in controlling people's wages. In the 13th century, Thomas Aquinas tried to come up with the idea and a kind of pre-socialist principle of how we managed wages between the rich and the poor. He failed. During the Soviet Union, in which there's many debates on here today about how Russia is being an empire again, was also trying to control wages across the board and make equality of wages. You saw the devastation that happened to the whole of Eastern Europe when people stopped the market and tried to make people earn exactly the same. What we have here today is the European Union deciding that they should control the wages of one sector of a very important part of the United Kingdom's industry, but the financial services industry, without really understanding the implication of how finance impacts across Europe. And then the second time, it leaves a very dangerous precedent. What do you do next? You then turn around and say footballers, who many of them earn a hell of a lot more than bankers, should their salaries be capped? Should they not have the bonuses for winning the European Champions League? Should actors and actresses not achieve the bonuses they get for their films and their movies, achieving success at the Oscars? It's a very dangerous thing and a slippery slope, and I think it's wrong.
We're talking also about the European financial sector, who can be, damaged by some traders who try to just think about the short-term profit, and just put us in a crisis. So.
Well, if you're trying to argue that fund managers who managed your pensions or your savings were the people who caused the crisis, then the analysis is completely fallacious and wrong. Because the crisis was caused by weak monetary policy undertaken by governments who spent more because they believed that the European Union and the other countries would bail out their bad decisions. People were borrowing in the international markets to fund programs in their countries, which was wrong when they couldn't afford to do so. I grew up in a very poor background in Manchester, and one of the very clear things that my grandmother used to say is that you have to live within your means. If you only had £100 a week, that's all that you can spend. But governments across Europe decided if they had £100 a week, they wanted to borrow another £100 and spend it badly.
So do you agree with Mr. Woolfe?
I think it's outrageous to listen to such a word. First, we are not discussing here wages. We are discussing bonuses, which is on top of wages. Second, I think this kind of wording ignore completely what has happened during the crisis. And it's really outrageous now for people to listen to someone who's telling us that the bankers have not failed in the way they have been dealing with public money and private money, because this crisis is a question of private debt in the beginning, and it's a question of speculative behavior on behalf of bankers who had inside interest in behavior that didn't help to finance a real strong job-creating investment, but that were only looking at short-term profit that would increase their own bonuses. So the link between these bonuses and the performance for the economy of these member states and the EU as a whole is completely wrong. Nobody knows where this has a strong connection between both.
So you mean we should think about middle and long term?
Of course, this is. Yeah. I mean, this is one of the lessons of this crisis, no doubt. Especially in a moment where the EU has to face global imbalances, where the cornerstone of what we need to look at is long-term investment, because now the EU economy as a whole, including the one of UK, is really threatened by the lack of investment. So I think this is where we need to look forward.
What about the long-term?
Well, the long term is, of course, that we have to drive investment through, but investment comes by markets and market participants and people who want to invest having an environment where they believe that there will be growth in that country when you put an investment in. But to turn around and say that bonuses aren't part of the salary package, again, misunderstands how it works.
But you spoke about wages.
Yes, because bonuses form part of the wages, and it depends on which part of the sector that you're in. In many of the fund management industries that form part of the committee that form
it's a wrong incentive. This is exactly what we're discussing. It's a wrong incentive.
We form part of the same committee in which your committee accepted that it wasn't hedge funds or private equity investors that caused the crisis. These are in the reports of the Econ Committee. It actually also said in this chamber, in many occasions, by many of the leading commissioners, that the cause of the crisis was caused by profligate government overspending. Who said exactly the same. So this is what we're doing. And when we're talking about the bankers' bonuses...
But the collapse of Northern Rock, to my knowledge, had nothing to do with public spending,
Well, of course, public spending. Bad public spending had a huge amount to do with it.
Northern Rock was about public spending. What are you saying? Come on.
You're talking about one institution out of the many institutions of the United Kingdom that didn't fail. Nationwide,
no, but you don't answer to my question.
Nationwide, I am answering your question. Nationwide didn't fail, and yet it had the same type of bankers working for it. The Chelsea Building Society didn't fail, yet it had the same type of bankers working for it. In every institution and every business, there should be an opportunity to fail. That is what a market is. That is what capitalism is. And what you're trying to entrench here in the rules is the way that the European Union bail out banks. We don't believe you should be bailing out banks, but the European Union did. We believe those banks should fail because they were badly controlled.
We've been moving the EU rules. We've been creating a very strong banking union, which you don't want to participate in.
But your banking union won't solve the problem.
You want to benefit from the internal market. So sometimes
your banking union will fail in the long run because you do not understand the fundamentals.
I'm not so sure bonuses would save it.
So we will remember. So, what is quite funny in this is that the man who is going to deal with this EU bankers' bonuses is British, is conservative, and it is Jonathan Hill, who was nominated as the Commissioner for Financial Affairs. So your group, the Socialists and Democrats Group, Pervenche Berès, said it's like a provocation. Why do you say that, and are you going to support him?
Well, we're going to challenge him, of course, and one of the big challenges is going to be on this question about bonuses, because he's going to be in charge of the EU legislation. And what has been voted by this Parliament and negotiated with the Council regarding bonuses is included in the EU legislation. So as Commissioner in charge of financial services, he will be in charge of the implementation of this rule. So I think it's critical to find out how he's going to follow this line. Of course, the other...
He's going to put the UK's interest in front of the European ones, do you think?
Well, we will have to check this. And what I expect from him, I hope he's listening to our broadcast, is that he would be able to make sure UK is compliant with the EU legislation, because otherwise he cannot be a commissioner if he excluded his own country from the application of the EU rules. So that would be completely contradictory.
Yeah, so let's remind our public that the UK challenged the UCAP bankers bonus at the European Court of Justice. And Mr. Woolfe, do you support the UK?
Oh, absolutely.
case?
Of course I support their challenge against the decision of the European Court of Human Justice, because I don't believe that court should make a decision on the wages and salaries of employees in a sovereign nation. That is the principle of our party. But there is a point I want to pick up. In almost your first sentence at the beginning of this interview, you said that there were problems within the European Union because there were disparities between one financial sector and another, and that's why we had to have the rules apply equally to the same, i.e. that we should have bankers' bonuses applying, the rules on bankers' bonuses applying equally across the European Union. The premise of that is the recognition that if the rules apply differently in one nation state, then they can usurp the rules in another. Well, that applies globally. The only way that this would work is if every nation in the globe also said no to bankers' bonuses and applied. And that is ideally what a communist-controlled state idea is.
This is always the argument.
And because, quite frankly...
Because you cannot do it worldwide, you cannot do anything.
You're accepting you can't do it in Europe-wide.
The EU is a community that has its own rules.
And the world isn't a community? The world isn't a community of people? Do we not all bleed if we cut at the same wrist?
Yeah, well, this is just a way to say I don't want to do anything and I don't want to be a member of the EU. This can be your policy, but this is not mine.
Okay, your last word before we wrap up the program, Mr. Berès?
No, I think you really have to take into account the feeling of people, and for most of the people, these bonuses that are coming back now through the window, notably in UK, appears like something insane when people are suffering to restore the soundness of their country. I think it will be for Jonathan Hill a real rendezvous to make sure he'll be able also to apply in all the EU internal market, the EU law regarding bonuses.
Thank you. Thank you both of you for coming, and thank you all of you for following us. See you.